On February 9, 2004, a biting cold winter evening fell over New Hampshire. Snow covered the narrow rural roads, the kind where headlights cast long shadows and silence pressed down on everything. It was on this night that 21-year-old Maura Murray, a University of Massachusetts nursing student, vanished without a trace. What began as a seemingly routine night would become one of the most enduring cold cases in America. Maura wasn't just another name in the headlines. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend whose life appeared full of promise. Her disappearance would shock her family, confound investigators, and ignite an internet firestorm that continues to this day. But before we get into the countless theories and speculation, we need to go back to her final known hours, to the events that still puzzle investigators nearly 2 decades later. A promising student with secrets. At the time of her disappearance, Maura was a nursing student at UMass Amherst. Friends and professors described her as bright, hardworking, and athletic. She had once been a standout runner in high school and was admired for her determination. But beneath the surface, Maura was carrying private struggles. In the days leading up to her disappearance, she seemed distracted and upset. On February 5th, she broke down at work during her shift at the campus security desk after receiving a phone call that left her visibly shaken. To this day, no one knows what that call was about, or who was on the other end of the line. Her boyfriend at the time, Army Lieutenant Billy Roche, was stationed in Oklahoma. Their relationship was serious, but complicated. Emails later revealed tensions and possible infidelity on both sides. For many, these small details would later feed into theories. Was Maura planning a fresh start? Was she running away from something? Or was she heading directly into danger without realizing it? The drive north. On the day she vanished, Maura emailed her professors to let them know she'd be gone for a week due to a family emergency. The truth? There was no emergency. Her family later confirmed nothing had happened at home. Instead, Maura packed her belongings, alcohol, clothes, and personal items, into her Saturn sedan. Around 4:30 p.m., she withdrew $280 in cash from an ATM, money she never used again. Surveillance footage shows her wearing a dark coat, with no visible signs of panic. She also stopped at a liquor store and purchased alcohol, including a box of wine. Her destination remains unknown. Some speculate she was heading to Bartlett, New Hampshire, an area she was familiar with from past trips. Others think she didn't have a plan at all. What we know for sure is this. By nightfall, Maura was driving alone on Route 112, a dark, winding road surrounded by woods and silence. The crash. Around 7:30 p.m., Maura's Saturn crashed into a snowbank near Haverhill, New Hampshire. A nearby resident, a school bus driver, noticed the car and stopped to check on her. He later told police she seemed shaken but not injured. When he offered help, she declined, insisting she had already called AAA. But records later showed she never made that call. By the time police arrived minutes later, Maura was gone. Her car sat abandoned with airbags deployed and a crack in the windshield. Inside, investigators found the alcohol she purchased, a packed bag, and directions printed from MapQuest. What they didn't find was Maura. No footprints led away from the vehicle. No signs of a struggle. No trace of her in the nearby woods. It was as if she had simply vanished into the freezing night. The first 24 hours. In missing persons cases, the first day is critical. But for reasons still debated, the response to Maura's disappearance was slow. Authorities initially treated the incident as a walkaway, believing she had chosen to leave on her own. Because of this, a full-scale search didn't begin until the following day. By then, any potential trail was gone. Dogs lost her scent within a few hundred feet from the car. Helicopters and ground teams scoured the area, but nothing turned up. Family and friends arrived, devastated and desperate for answers. Her father, Fred Murray, would spend the next 2 decades demanding answers from police, media, and anyone who would listen. The beginning of a mystery. From that night forward, the case of Maura Murray became more than a missing persons investigation. It became a mystery layered with unanswered questions. Why did she tell her professors there was a family emergency when there wasn't? Why pack her car with alcohol and belongings for what looked like an unannounced trip? Why vanish just minutes before police arrived, leaving everything behind? Some say Maura wanted to escape her life and start fresh. Others believe she may have met with foul play in the moments after leaving her car. And then there are those who think the crash was staged, part of a larger plan she had carefully orchestrated. A case that wouldn't die. In the days that followed, the story of Maura Murray spread far beyond New England. News outlets picked it up, online forums dissected every detail, and amateur detectives pored over her timeline, searching for answers the police couldn't provide. Her disappearance quickly became one of the first major cases to gain traction in the age of internet sleuthing. For her family, it was a nightmare without end. Every lead felt like hope. Every dead end deepened the pain. And as the weeks turned into months, the silence grew heavier. What happened to Maura Murray after that crash on Route 112? That single question has haunted investigators, family members, and internet sleuths for nearly 2 decades. The night of February 9, 2004, ended in silence. Snow blanketed Route 112 as police secured the scene of Maura Murray's abandoned Saturn sedan. What began as a minor car accident quickly turned into something far stranger. Within minutes of the crash, Maura had vanished, leaving no signs of where she went or why. By the following morning, the search for Maura Murray was underway, but already, precious time had slipped away. For investigators, family, and a growing number of online sleuths, those first 24 hours became the foundation for a case that would remain unsolved for decades. A vanishing without clues. When police officers first arrived at the crash site around 7:46 p.m., they found a scene that looked both ordinary and unusual. The Saturn sat against a snowbank with its airbags deployed, but there was no serious damage to the car. The doors were locked, the lights were off, and there was no sign of Maura. Inside the car, investigators discovered a box of Franzia wine, some of it spilled inside, empty beer bottles, a receipt from the liquor store, her packed belongings, including toiletries and textbooks, printed directions from MapQuest to Burlington, Vermont. What investigators didn't find was her wallet, credit cards, or cell phone, items Maura may have taken with her. But with no footprints in the snow leading away from the car, it was unclear how she left or where she went. A delayed response. Police initially believed Maura might have been intoxicated and fled the scene to avoid trouble. After all, there was alcohol in the car, and her refusal of help from the bus driver seemed suspicious. For this reason, law enforcement treated the case less urgently than a typical missing persons report. This decision would later haunt the investigation. By the time a full-scale search began, the trail was already cold. Bloodhounds picked up Maura's scent, but lost it about 100 yards east of the crash site, near the road. To some, this suggested she may have been picked up by another vehicle. A father's fury. Maura's father, Fred Murray, quickly arrived in New Hampshire after hearing the news. He was furious with how authorities were handling the situation. To him, this wasn't a case of a young woman running away. It was something much more sinister. Fred believed his daughter was abducted. He pointed to the lack of footprints in the snow, the timing of her disappearance, and the fact that she had just minutes to vanish before police arrived. To him, the idea that Maura had willingly disappeared didn't make sense. In interviews, Fred pleaded with the public for help, criticizing investigators for what he saw as a sluggish response. His frustration would grow over the years as the case dragged on without answers, and his persistence would become one of the driving forces keeping Maura's story alive. Theories begin to emerge. From the very start, theories about Maura's disappearance began circulating. The strange details, her packed car, her lies about a family emergency, the alcohol, the crash, created endless possibilities. The runaway theory. Some believed Maura had planned to escape her life. She had emailed professors about a family emergency that didn't exist, packed her car with alcohol and belongings, and printed out directions. Perhaps she wanted to leave everything behind and start over in a new place. Suicide. Another theory suggested Maura was suicidal. In the weeks before her disappearance, She had been caught using a stolen credit card, and her relationship with her boyfriend was strained. Combined with the secrecy of her final trip, some wondered if she intended to end her life in the woods. Abduction, the theory Fred Murray strongly believed in, that Maura had been abducted. The lack of footprints and the suddenness of her disappearance suggested she might have gotten into a passing car, willingly or unwillingly. The area was remote, but not completely deserted, and police couldn't rule out foul play, an accident in the woods. Some theorized that Maura may have wandered into the forest after the crash, possibly intoxicated or injured, and succumbed to the cold. But despite extensive searches, no trace of her body was ever found. Police versus family. As the days turned into weeks, tension between the Murray family and law enforcement grew. Police continued to lean toward the theory that Maura had run away voluntarily, pointing to her actions before the crash. The family, however, refused to believe she would simply disappear without contacting them. The lack of answers fueled suspicion. Why were police so quick to dismiss foul play? Were they covering something up? These questions began to swirl not only within the Murray family, but also among the growing community of online investigators who had become captivated by the case. The rise of internet sleuths. By the mid-2000s, the internet was giving rise to a new phenomenon: online true crime communities. Maura's case became one of the first major mysteries to be dissected in forums, blogs, and eventually podcasts. Thousands of people began analyzing every detail of her last known day. Forum threads stretched for hundreds of pages, with armchair detectives debating theories, sharing maps, and speculating about motives. Some even traveled to the crash site to conduct their own investigations. This surge of interest kept Maura's case alive in the public eye, but it also created controversy. Theories turned into rumors, and strangers often targeted Maura's family and friends with speculation and accusations. While the internet gave the case exposure, it also created noise that complicated the search for truth. A haunting silence. Despite the attention, the official investigation produced few solid leads. No confirmed sightings of Maura ever surfaced. No evidence pointed definitively to foul play. The woods and roads surrounding the crash site yielded nothing. The silence was deafening. Each passing day deepened the mystery and made the possibility of solving the case feel more distant. Still, her family refused to give up hope. Fred Murray continued to organize searches, and volunteers from across the country came to help. But the woods of New Hampshire kept their secret. Seeds of doubt. As weeks turned into months, the public fascination with the case only grew. But so did the doubts. Was Maura really abducted? Could she have staged her disappearance? Had she simply chosen a new life, leaving her past behind? The more people looked into the case, the more questions emerged. Every detail, her ATM withdrawal, her purchases, her MapQuest directions, could be interpreted in multiple ways. For investigators and internet sleuths alike, Maura's disappearance became less about finding clear answers and more about navigating an endless maze of possibilities. The case that wouldn't fade. By spring of 2004, Maura's disappearance had already become a national story. News outlets covered the mystery, highlighting the strange details and emotional pleas from her family. But despite the attention, there were no major breakthroughs. The case officially remained open, but without evidence, it drifted into the frustrating territory of unsolved mysteries. For the Murray family, however, it was never just a cold case. It was a wound that refused to heal. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. By the time the initial searches ended with no trace of Maura Murray, one thing was clear: her disappearance was not going to be easily explained. What started as a missing persons case had now become a labyrinth of theories. Everyone, police, family, internet sleuths, and journalists, had their own ideas about what happened. But every theory carried contradictions, and none could fully explain the puzzle. The mystery of Maura's disappearance was no longer just about a missing young woman. It had become a national obsession, drawing comparisons to the disappearance of Amelia Earhart or the case of the Zodiac Killer. Unsolved mysteries that leave behind endless speculation. The runaway theory. The first theory investigators leaned on was that Maura had chosen to run away from her life. The family emergency lie. Why would she tell her professors she'd be gone for a week for a family emergency that never happened? The packed car, alcohol, clothing, toiletries, and directions. These were not the belongings of someone going on a short errand. It looked more like she was preparing for a trip. Relationship trouble. Her relationship with her boyfriend, Billy Roche, was strained. He had reportedly cheated on her, and Maura herself had been communicating with another man online. These details painted a picture of a young woman under stress who may have wanted to escape, at least temporarily. But her family rejected this idea outright. Maura wouldn't just leave us. Her father, Fred Murray, insisted. If she was in trouble, she'd call. For critics, the runaway theory seemed too simplistic. If Maura wanted to disappear, why crash her car in a remote area? Why leave behind most of her belongings? And why vanish so suddenly in the narrow window before police arrived? The suicide theory. Another theory suggested Maura may have been suicidal. The evidence supporting this theory included her recent struggles with the stolen credit card charge, a car accident just days earlier, where she crashed her father's car after a night of drinking, the alcohol in her vehicle, and her apparent secrecy about where she was going. Perhaps, some argued, she intended to end her life alone in the woods. But this theory has significant flaws. No body was ever found despite extensive searches. Cadaver dogs and helicopters scoured the area for weeks. If Maura had taken her own life nearby, surely some trace would have surfaced. Even years later, no remains connected to her have been discovered. The abduction theory. The possibility of foul play remains one of the most compelling theories. The timing. Maura vanished within minutes of the crash, in freezing temperatures, with no footprints in the snow leading away. Did someone pick her up? The location. Route 112 was remote but not deserted. Locals and passersby used it regularly. It's possible a dangerous stranger, or even someone Maura knew, encountered her at just the wrong moment. The scent trail. Dogs tracked her scent for a short distance but lost it abruptly on the road, supporting the idea that she may have entered a vehicle. But who would abduct her? Random predators are rare, especially in small towns like Haverhill. Still, in 2004, nearby New Hampshire and Vermont had several registered sex offenders, and Maura's case renewed fears about opportunistic criminals. A staged disappearance? A more unusual theory is that Maura staged her disappearance intentionally. According to this theory, the crash was part of a plan to vanish and start over. Supporters point to the MapQuest directions to Burlington, Vermont, her choice to pack alcohol, cash, and personal belongings, the lie about a family emergency. But again, critics argue that staging an accident in the middle of nowhere, in the freezing cold, is an odd way to begin a new life. And if Maura wanted to disappear, why has no evidence of her surfaced in the years since? The boyfriend, Billy Roche. Naturally, suspicion turned to Maura's boyfriend, Army Lieutenant Billy Roche. Long-distance relationships are difficult, and Billy's military posting in Oklahoma had strained theirs further. Emails revealed trust issues, including hints of infidelity. After Maura disappeared, Billy was reportedly desperate to find her. He flew in to join the search and cooperated with investigators. Yet some internet sleuths questioned his role, wondering whether their rocky relationship could have pushed Maura toward running away, or worse, whether he knew more than he admitted. To date, there is no evidence linking him to her disappearance. But in the court of public opinion, suspicion has lingered. The local connection. Another theory suggested that Maura may have fallen victim to someone in the local community. Some residents near the crash site became subjects of speculation. Theories emerged that she could have accepted a ride from someone who meant her harm. One of the most talked about names was a man who lived just miles from the crash site and had a history of troubling behavior. Online sleuths latched onto the idea that he might have lured or harmed Maura. Police questioned him, but no charges were ever filed. This speculation highlights a frustrating element of Maura's case: the lack of transparency. Police have long kept certain details private, fueling public suspicion and theories of a cover-up. The accident in the woods. Some investigators still believe the most likely explanation is that Maura wandered into the forest after the crash. Perhaps she was intoxicated, disoriented, or even concussed. In the freezing February night, hypothermia could have set in quickly. Yet despite dozens of search parties combing the area with dogs, ATVs, and helicopters, nothing was ever found. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, not a trace of Maura. This has led many to dismiss the theory outright. If she was there, we would have found her, one search volunteer later said. The internet effect. The explosion of theories surrounding Maura's case was fueled by the internet. From the early days of online forums to podcasts and documentaries, her disappearance became one of the most debated mysteries in the digital age. The attention kept the case alive but also muddied the waters. Rumors and speculation sometimes overshadowed facts. Strangers accused family members, friends, and locals of terrible things with little evidence. For the Murray family, the constant spotlight was both a blessing and a curse. Endless possibilities. What makes Maura's case so haunting is that every theory feels plausible, yet none can be proven. If she ran away, why has she never resurfaced? If she died by suicide, why has no body been found? If she was abducted, who was the perpetrator? If she staged her disappearance, how has she stayed hidden this long? Each possibility raises as many questions as it answers. And that is why, nearly 2 decades later, the case of Maura Murray still grips the public imagination. The family's pain. Through it all, Maura's family has never stopped searching. Her father Fred has said again and again that he believes Maura was the victim of foul play. Her sister Julie has worked tirelessly to keep the story in the public eye. For them, theories are not entertainment. They are painful reminders of the daughter and sister who never came home. The mystery deepens. By the end of 2004, Maura's disappearance had become one of the most famous cold cases in New England. Yet investigators were no closer to solving it. Theories swirled endlessly, but concrete evidence was scarce. The truth lay buried. Years passed after the February night in 2004 when Maura Murray disappeared on Route 112. With no body, no confirmed sightings, and no solid suspects, the case seemed destined to fade into the cold case files of New Hampshire law enforcement. Yet something about Maura's story refused to die. Her case became one of the earliest mysteries to capture the digital generation. Online sleuths, podcasts, and documentaries transformed Maura from a missing person into a symbol of unsolved mysteries in the modern age. And as time went on, new searches, discoveries, and whispers of evidence reignited hope that the truth might finally be within reach. A family's relentless push. Fred Murray never stopped searching for his daughter. He pressed law enforcement for more transparency, often clashing with officials over withheld evidence. His persistence drew media attention and kept Maura's case in headlines long after most missing person cases would have been forgotten. The Murray family organized searches, spoke to journalists, and even collaborated with private investigators. Their determination kept pressure on authorities and made sure Maura's name remained in the public eye. But with pressure came controversy. Internet sleuths dissected every word Fred and other family members said, sometimes twisting their statements into theories or accusations. The family endured not only the pain of a missing loved one, but also the weight of constant scrutiny. The Oxygen documentary. In 2017, more than a decade after Maura's disappearance, the case was thrust back into the spotlight through the Oxygen Network's 6-part documentary series, The Disappearance of Maura Murray. The series brought new attention to the case, exploring theories and featuring interviews with family members, investigators, and journalists. It also highlighted the role of online communities in keeping Maura's story alive. For many viewers, the documentary was their first introduction to Maura's mystery. It raised awareness and renewed interest, but it also reignited debates. Some praised the series for keeping the case alive. Others criticized it for leaning too heavily on speculation. Still, the series achieved what few could. It put Maura Murray back in the national conversation. Technology and cold case breakthroughs. By the 2010s, advances in forensic technology were solving decades-old mysteries across the country. DNA testing, genealogy databases, and digital mapping transformed how cold cases were investigated. For Maura's case, this sparked hope. If other unsolved cases could be cracked by new science, maybe hers could too. Police re-examined evidence, though they remained tight-lipped about what they had. The secrecy fueled suspicion among internet sleuths but also suggested investigators weren't ready to give up. Bones in the woods. One of the most dramatic moments in the renewed search came in 2019, when human bones were discovered in Loon Mountain, New Hampshire, just miles from where Maura vanished. Speculation exploded online. Could these remains finally be Maura's? The location was close enough to be possible, and the timing reignited worldwide media attention. But after forensic testing, the bones were confirmed not to belong to Maura Murray. The discovery was a painful reminder of how many cold cases haunt New England, and how elusive Maura's trail remained. The basement search. In 2006, rumors began circulating about a suspicious house near the crash site. A local man allegedly behaved strangely after Maura's disappearance, and some believed he may have been involved. Years later, in 2019, investigators conducted a ground-penetrating radar scan of the man's basement, following claims that a body may have been buried there. The scan revealed a potential disturbance under the concrete floor. But when authorities finally searched the site, they found nothing. Another lead had collapsed, leaving more questions than answers. The role of internet sleuths. By now, Maura Murray's case had become one of the most famous unsolved mysteries online. Her story appeared on Reddit threads, YouTube channels, podcasts, and blogs. True crime enthusiasts treated it like a puzzle to be solved, combing through maps, phone records, and witness statements. Some of these efforts uncovered useful insights, while others veered into dangerous territory, spreading rumors or harassing individuals connected to the case. The internet had become both an ally and an obstacle in the search for truth. Still, it cannot be denied. Without online sleuths, Maura's story might have slipped into obscurity long ago. Instead, it remains a living, breathing mystery. Family and community events. Every year, on the anniversary of Maura's disappearance, her family and supporters gather for vigils. These events are not only moments of remembrance, but also public reminders that Maura's case remains unsolved. Someone out there knows something, her sister Julie has said repeatedly. For the family, silence is the enemy. Each vigil is a plea for answers, a reminder that Maura is more than a headline. She is a person whose story is unfinished. New theories, old questions. With every new search and every piece of media coverage, theories continued to evolve. Some suggested Maura may have been the victim of a serial predator operating in the area. Others believed she successfully started a new life and doesn't want to be found. Each new lead sparked hope and speculation, but also frustration. After so many years, the absence of definitive answers only deepened the mystery. The case in the digital age. What sets Maura's case apart from countless other cold cases is the timing. She disappeared in 2004, just as the internet was beginning to shape public conversation. Had she gone missing in 1994, her story may have faded quietly. Had it happened in 2014, digital surveillance and cell phone tracking might have provided more answers. Instead, Maura's disappearance sits in a strange middle ground. Not quite analog, not quite digital. Enough mystery to spark endless speculation, but not enough evidence to provide closure. Searching for closure. For the Murray family, every new clue brings a mix of hope and heartbreak. Bones, basement scans, and media coverage all raise the possibility of answers, only to collapse under the weight of inconclusive results. Nearly 2 decades later, Maura's disappearance remains an open wound. Her family continues to demand answers, and her case continues to inspire debate, documentaries, and internet theories. Nearly 2 decades after Maura Murray disappeared on February 9, 2004, the case still sits at the crossroads of new leads and old mysteries. Her name has become almost synonymous with unsolved disappearances, one of those rare cases that continues to live in both professional investigations and the public imagination. But as more time passes, one painful question remains. Are we moving closer to the truth, or are we simply going in circles? The hope of new evidence. For years, Maura's family, especially her father, Fred Murray, has pushed for renewed efforts to search in the area near Route 112, where her Saturn was found abandoned. Advances in technology, particularly ground-penetrating radar, DNA testing, and forensic genealogy, have raised hopes that new evidence could finally break the case wide open. In 2019, police reportedly excavated a home basement near the crash site after receiving a tip. Although no remains were found, the event reignited interest and showed just how many possibilities still exist in the case. Every new test, every potential search site, carries the weight of both hope and heartbreak for Maura's loved ones. Internet sleuths versus official investigators. One of the most defining elements of Maura Murray's case is how it became a true crime internet phenomenon. Blogs, podcasts, Reddit threads, and YouTube videos continue to analyze every detail, from the items in her car to the timing of her phone calls. Some argue this online attention has helped keep the case alive, bringing in tips and ideas that police may not have considered. Others worry it has caused misinformation, harassment, and endless speculation that distracts from finding real answers. The friction between law enforcement secrecy and public curiosity has been a constant tension. Authorities have kept many details under wraps, claiming they are protecting the integrity of the investigation. But that very secrecy fuels more theories, more doubt, and more obsession from online sleuths determined to solve what the professionals could not. Theories that still haunt the case. Over the years, a handful of theories have dominated discussions about Maura's disappearance. Accidental death in the woods. Some believe Maura may have wandered off after the crash, succumbing to the elements in the freezing February night. Yet, despite countless searches with dogs, drones, and cadaver teams, no trace of her has been found. Foul play by a passerby or local. The idea that Maura accepted help from the wrong person remains one of the most chilling possibilities. The remote location of the crash site has fueled suspicions of an opportunistic predator or even a local resident with dark secrets. A planned disappearance. Others think Maura staged her disappearance, overwhelmed by personal struggles and academic pressures. But if that's true, why has she never resurfaced? No bank activity, no digital trail, no sightings confirmed in nearly 2 decades? Each theory answers some questions but leaves others dangling in uncertainty. The toll on the family. For Maura's family, the case is not just a mystery. It's a wound that never heals. Her father, Fred, has been relentless in keeping her story in the public eye, often criticizing police for withholding information. Her siblings and loved ones continue to mark anniversaries of her disappearance, pleading for answers. What makes the pain sharper is the endless speculation online, where strangers debate Maura's life choices, her state of mind, and even her character. While this attention ensures her case isn't forgotten, it also means her memory is tangled in controversy and rumor, something no grieving family should have to bear. Why Maura's case still resonates. The disappearance of Maura Murray remains one of the most captivating cold cases in American history because it taps into something universal. The fear of vanishing without a trace, of leaving loved ones with only questions. Her story sits at the intersection of mystery and modern obsession, where traditional police work collides with digital-age sleuthing. Unlike other cases that fade from the headlines, Maura's continues to spark new discussions, new podcasts, and even television documentaries, each one hoping to uncover the missing piece. Will we ever know the truth? So where does this leave us? The reality is that the disappearance of Maura Murray may never be solved, or it could be solved tomorrow with a single discovery. A piece of clothing, a bone fragment, a confession, or a breakthrough in forensic science. Until then, the case will remain what it has always been. An endless maze of hope and heartbreak, clues and dead ends, theories and counter-theories. For every person who studies her story, whether an FBI agent, a small-town cop, or an online researcher, the goal remains the same: to bring Maura home, to give her family peace, and to finally answer the haunting question: what happened to Maura Murray? Closing thoughts. The story of Maura Murray is not just about one missing woman. It is about how we, as a society, grapple with the unknown. It shows the power of hope, the pitfalls of speculation, and the painful reality that some mysteries may never be solved. But as long as her name is spoken, as long as people continue to search, there is still a chance, however slim, that the truth will come out. And until that day, Maura's disappearance will remain one of the most enduring mysteries of our time.